Hi, I'm Bethea. I'm a video game composer and sound designer. I've been working professionally in the industry for 8 years. And throughout my career, I've mostly worked on indie games, but I've also worked on a couple big projects as well. If you're interested in checking out some of that work, you can visit www.chasebethea.com. I've been invited by Business of Indie Games to talk to you about how to make your game's music and sound be compelling and have a planned structured success for game audio. So to understand how music and sound design and technical sound design can set your project apart, we need to understand what a crucial role that plays. And if you take your favorite game like Mario or Legend of Zelda and you turn the sound off, you'd be missing this immersiveness. That's the crucial role that it plays because it's a part of the writing, it's a part of the art, it's a part of the gameplay. Everything is mostly connected. And without that, you're not giving your project a sonic identity. In conjunction with it being a collaborative art form, it seems like it's just mostly pulled apart. When it's pulled apart, it doesn't have the cohesion that everything else goes along with it. So if you're just, it's just empty. It's like a empty vessel or with a plant without water that's normally dying. The sound design or music process to begin with a project, you normally need to kind of be on it as early as possible to discuss different ideas and storylines and other gameplay mechanics that may find crucial in terms of what's going to pull the player in. And with that, you use Technical Sound Designer. It's just a software that basically talks to the game engine. And these things are tied together. So when you have your assets, your music assets, your sound design assets, that is put into a software called Middleware. And then that talks to the game engine, and those things are married together, and then they work with different animations, different cutscenes, things of that nature. So the technical sound design is crucial to pulling the player in. It makes it more alluring, it's captivating. These things that are going into it are everything that pulls the storytelling and the writing and the gameplay together and just has it very tight in a nice packaged product for the player in the end. The score for the game and the music is typically working with one or two composers, and with that they talk to the producer or the game designer or whoever in charge of the project and discuss ideas, talk about the environment settings, talk about how the end play of the game is usually towards for the journey of what the player is going to be experiencing and different influences that have come apart in terms of other games that they are inspired by. And with that, we use references or placeholders to justify where things actually fit within the game. And so the composer will go back, take these ideas, and probably work on it for about a year to 5 to 7 years of creating these themes for different characters, themes for different environments, whether it be in the mountains with snow or the grasslands or the desert, and make a story with the notes to pull together things that are going to happen within the game, whether the player is triggering it or if the player doesn't trigger it. And with that, it becomes where the glue and the magic really happens. So the sound design and the score typically will work in tandem, and that's crucial because you don't want to have a score that's louder than the sounds, and you don't want to have the sounds that's louder than the score because it's going to pull the player out immediately just like that. You want to have it be as smooth as possible and everything being balanced. You don't want anything being too loud, or you don't want the player even turning the sound or the game audio off at all. You don't want them to just lose that focus. And that's why it's really important because, like I said, as the final product of the collaborative art form, when you're working with the writing and the gameplay, if anything is unbalanced, the player will notice and it pulls them out and it doesn't make them want to play, or the retention is lost. It's important to meet with composers and sound designers in the pre-production process of development because you want to, if you're doing a story and the music tells a story, the sounds tells a story, you want everything to be as cohesive as possible in conjunction with the art, the gameplay, and the writing that goes together in the final product. Music and sound design is so crucial to have in the early stages of development because it creates a sonic identity that will set your game apart from any other game that is out there. It's the same thing as if you were in the arcade and without visually seeing the game, you can understand and know exactly what game that is without being there in person. Just know that it's any game that you have ever wanted to play, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Street Fighter, whatever it is, you would know what it is because you know the music and you know the sound. The same thing pretty much occurs in the early process because you're telling the story, the sound works with that in conjunction with the art, the gameplay, and the writing. It's very important to include an audio budget from the very beginning of your game development. Many times, a lot of game developers decide to have it as an afterthought and then are rushing to kind of get those assets into the game, and this is not good. This will cause your budget to be overblown because it becomes more expensive because you're trying to have a rush job, and the quality product in the end is probably not going to be great. What they typically do in film is they have something called pre-production, where they decide who the directors, the cinematographers, actresses, caterers even, are decided in from the very beginning of the project to the end. And this saves them a lot of time, and they are able to discern what the budget is. So for game development, I would suggest that if you are developing a game, to put 10 to 15% of the budget aside from the entire production and maybe have a 5% buffer just in case for any delays in production overall. I also would suggest that if you are wanting to work with any game audio professional and their rates may be a little high, please negotiate. Just ask. You never know what you're going to get if you don't ask, and it may turn out to be a great collaboration and an end product in the end. An asset list is very important for your game development project and pre-production, and it keeps a clear channel between the game designer, the writers, the artists, the composer, and the sound designers to understand what assets are needed from the very beginning of the project. If you didn't have this, you would have a mess and not really understanding what sounds are going anywhere, and your milestones may get tripped up, your budget may get out of place, and this can get very expensive very fast. So the organization for having this sheet is paramount and is absolutely needed for your project if you're in the pre-production process. Otherwise, it won't end. There's a couple of different middleware software that you can use. It's Fmod, Wise, Cryware, and Fabric. And just go on their website, check out what licenses they offer. And this is where you can set most of your game projects and your game audio apart from others. Middleware is a software that basically talks to the game engine itself. It's where you put your music assets, your sound assets, and this is actually where the magic can truly happen. You can have layers, vertical layers, horizontal layers of things that are queued at different times with different player actions, and then those sound assets will be triggered and the music cues will be triggered to run seamlessly and more immersive, where you can spatialize it to happen around you or to start in the beginning of wherever you're entering an area in. And this is how you pull it together. This is how you allure the player. This is why it's so crucial to have it, and it's really powerful if you utilize it in that way. Typically, anybody can use the middleware software. It could be a technical sound designer, which is the more formal terminology of the position. It could be a composer, or it could be a sound designer themselves, as long as they know the program. And where it really shines is if you're in a battle combat sequence and the music is really pumping, there's action, there's tension, and everything is kind of going on screen. You're fighting, you're kicking, and you're having the punch sounds being slowed down, which could be cued based off of certain cutscenes that are happening when a player actually triggers that. And after the combat is over, the cue, or the music cue rather, will just fade out seamlessly rather than just stopping on the mark. That's usually where the middleware is shining the most, is like I said, gluing that process and that immersiveness from going into combat strong to exiting to entering again, and even overlapping, whereas and it doesn't seem like there's a chopping block happening. It's just very organic. Placeholders are good to have, but it's not best to be married to them, only because when you put them as references or links in that asset list that we were talking about earlier, they are things that can show the composer and sound designer that you're trying to get close to, but that you're not necessarily sure that fits. But at least it is a foundation to say, this is what I think I really want if you're a game designer or developer. And with that, the game developer can talk to the composer and sound designer and hopefully trust them to make the actual asset that they need that knows fits the game. So placeholders is more of like exactly what it is, a placeholder to just say, this is what I'm trying to get close to, but it'd be nice to have something better. The placeholder is good, but don't get married to it, because oftentimes this kind of becomes a little bit offensive to the composer and sound designer, and it won't be a good look in the end. But just keep in mind that it's good to have in the early process. So in closing, audio plays a key role in game development. You can take the player out immediately with some poor quality music and sound design. You don't want that. The player will pay for good content, and they deserve it. But you deserve good quality game audio. Invest in your project and the value that comes with it.